Duncan McNab here, September 25th, 2024, and some extraordinary developments in an old cold case homicide in Victoria. I'll give you a snapshot of the case beforehand and then move into what the developments are. As I always mention, chronology is incredibly important in these things. January 10th, 1977, 47 years ago, friends Suzanne Armstrong, then 28, and Susan Bartlett, 27, both from regional Victoria, were stabbed to death inside their Easey Street, Collingwood home. Now, Collingwood is an inner-city Melbourne suburb. Ms Armstrong was stabbed 27 times and raped. Ms Bartlett was stabbed 55 times. 3 days later, their bodies are found by neighbours who raised the alarm. They also found Ms Bartlett's 16-month-old son was at the crime scene in his cot, unharmed but very distressed and dehydrated. The investigation was massive that followed. Solving these crimes as fast as possible is an imperative because the longer it takes, the less chance you have of solving it becomes. About 2 weeks after the murder, Perry Carombolis, then 17 years old, was pulled over while driving. Police searched his car and found a knife with a 10.5-inch blade. It was in a scabbard. There were smatterings of blood on both the knife and the scabbard, allegedly. Mr Carombolis reckoned that he'd found it near a local train station. There was no further evidence to push him up the list of suspects or reduce him, so he joined a couple of hundred other persons of interest on the police list. Sadly, no further evidence came forward in the case that could lead to an arrest, so it became a cold case murder. In 1990, Australia was finally adapting DNA technology, somewhat behind many other parts of the world. DNA experts developed a profile from stuff found at that crime scene. One of those items was reportedly a semen sample. Over the years, this technology and their original profiling was used to eliminate people from the list of suspects. On the 40th anniversary of the case, in January 2017, Victoria Police announced a further round of DNA testing technology had improved dramatically since the early days. And they would be testing 90 living people and samples from 41 dead people connected to the case. They also offered a $1 million reward for information leading to the arrest and conviction of anyone responsible. Now, on that list of 90 living was a chap called Perry Carombolis, now an Australian Greek national, now 57 years old, and the young bloke spoken to years ago with a knife in the back of his car. He agreed to undertake a DNA test, but didn't provide a sample. However, he did leave Australia and went to Greece, where he was going to look after his ailing mother. As an aside, the extradition arrangements between Australia and Greece are, to put it politely, complicated one for the lawyers to discuss. What the police did do was take a sample from a close relative of Mr Carombolis. Now, this is a familial DNA. It's becoming more usable these days. It's stunning technology. As a sidebar here, familial DNA has been used to great effect in recent cases. Separate to this, of course, I hasten to add, it was an imperative in the case of Joseph D'Angelo, the Golden State Killer. In that case, Mr. D'Angelo had been in California committing rapes and murders for a period of years back in the 80s. There was some DNA samples at the crime scenes which had been kept by police. Great work. One of Mr. D'Angelo's relatives, I think a cousin or some such, had decided to check out his family history a little bit more and had submitted his own DNA sample to one of these organisations like Ancestry.com. What it did was send up red flags immediately, and instead of finding out a bit more about his more interesting family history, they found out the dark side of his family, presumably when cops knocked on the door and asked if he had a relative who might have been in San Francisco area around about the mid-1980s. That relative turned out to be Joseph D'Angelo. The genealogists track step by step in the family till they finally find the bloke to arrest. It's terrific police work. Now, in this case, what the police did after getting these DNA results in Victoria, they issued a red notice with Interpol, which is basically if the chap goes through immigration somewhere in the world, it sends up a red flag. That red flag went up for Mr Carombolis on the 19th of September 2024, when he was arrested at Rome after arriving at Leonardo da Vinci International Airport around 9 p.m. Thanks for that Interpol red notice. Now, he's still in custody in Rome. Australian police, if they are not on their way, are already there. Extradition proceedings are likely, and it won't be quick. It will take quite some time. These things internationally are quite complicated. And I think in the interest of fairness too, DNA is stunning technology, but whilst it is sound in itself, the question in many DNA cases, and this is completely unrelated to this one we're talking about, one of the arguments in DNA cases is not that the technology is sound, it's how the actual DNA sample got to the crime scene or to the exhibit that links the person to the crime. A perfect example of how this technology may not, perfect example of how this technology is great, but may not be the money shot that police are looking for is the case in Sydney of a bloke called Robert D. Heredia, who allegedly had placed DNA samples while licking postage stamps that he put on an envelope, put on a package. And the package subsequently was delivered to a house. It contained a bomb. The bomb went off. Mr. D. Heredia was arrested, substantially based on his DNA sample found on the back of the postage stamps. Now, Mr. D. Heredia was in prison on remand for a couple of years, but he was finally acquitted because one of the reasons for his acquittal is that how the DNA sample on those postage stamps got to be on the package containing the bomb couldn't be proven conclusively. It's an interesting case. DNA is remarkable, science is very sound, but the trick often in criminal cases is not the science, but actually how the DNA got to the exhibit itself. And with that, I'll keep you updated on this Easey Street murder case as it progresses. We have a long way to go. First up is extradition proceedings, and that's not going to be quick. Thank you.